So I open up my presentation with a Vodou chant that is primarily for the Haitian spirit and guider Ezeli Freda, one that many women and men have called to be their protector and guide, or their Mented. It is with this chant that I not only embody her strength, love, vulnerability, but also her protection. So, Ezeli banda, Ezeli banda, Ezeli bande passe salvo. Ezeli banda, Ezeli banda, Ezeli banda, passe coli. I'll do that one more time. Ezeli banda, Ezeli banda, Ezeli bande, passe salvo. Ezeli banda, Ezeli banda, Ezeli banda, passe coli. And it's so funny that every time I do this, I watch my shoulders move. And I'm like, just calm down, be professional. And how this has been 4 years since I've been at this Vodou ceremony, but I still think of Karen McCarthy Brown when she says, the body never forgets. So I think of that. So loosely translated, this is pretentious Ezeli, sexy Ezeli. Sexy Ezeli outdoes herself. Strutting Ezeli, preening Ezeli. Preening Ezeli thinks she's something. So this chant also, although brief and repetitive, speaks volumes on the way that Ezeli Freda is revered, praised, and yet at the same time seemingly distant. The Lawa, or spirit, of love and abundance is mostly known in the Haitian pantheon for her material worldly possessions, such as gold necklaces, earrings that are encrusted with jewels and or diamonds, silk, satin, and other pink and blue lace trimmings. She is preoccupied with establishing her wealth, upper class, and luxury, and is also depicted in Haitian mythology with numerous scandals of lovers with not only her practitioners, but with other male Lawas such as Legba, Dambala, Gede, Ogu, and Agwe. Although she is commonly compared and associated with the Yoruba deity Oshun and Ezeli Weda of Benin, Ezeli Freda is a key example of what happens to the spirit when it travels across the waters. This spirit, having vestiges of African past, because of the Middle Passage, has to respond to different sets of needs, desires, and expectations from its practitioners. She also has to respond to the new territories or lands and in sets of rules and governments that has either helped or hindered her followers. It is this concept that makes the diaspora so distinct. It's the continual reworking of memory as the forefront of our African past, and at the same time, a constant adaptation and malleability of both human and the divine. Ezeli Freda, at a larger picture of Haitian Vodou, has its own distinct trajectory when it comes to its history of Haitian people, especially dealing with French colonization of Africans and African enslavement. Haitian Vodou is a powerful element in understanding the formations of gender, sexuality, and colorism. Vodou's acceptance of sexual and gender diversity is part of their religious worldview, and this not only distinguishes Haiti in terms of its religiosity, but also in terms of its sexualities and possible genders. So this paper is this paper is part of a larger project where I mostly integrate how scholars and practitioners view the significance and representations of the Haitian Vodou deities within the Ezeli family and their different manifestations. So I also look at Ezeli Danto, Ezeli La Serene, Ezeli Rouge, Ezeli with the red eyes, Grand Ezeli, Ezeli Kokobe, the shriveled, and how they are mostly shown through scholarly work as binaries or opposite of one another. And again, I also talk about the dark skin and light skin, and how that also plays into a part, especially when you think about Ezeli Danto, who is seen as this mother figure and woman warrior, but yet is downplayed sexually, whereas Freda is hypersexualized. And what does that mean? What does it say about darker skinned black women? How is our love and our sexuality being present? That's later. So early scholarship has provided limited representation of these vast deities, which do not expose the full complexity of the multifaceted Loa and their role of understanding femininity, womanhood, and sexuality in Haitian society. Representation of these laws have become fixed, so much that one is sexualized and the other is not. But through educational, anthropological, religious, performance, sociological, and historiographical enterprises, new scholars have expanded the complex understandings that crystallizes clear findings of these Haitian Vodou deities. It is with this understanding that in motion towards a perspective that Ezeli Freda have complex identities and provide healing to the practitioners that worship them. So in this paper, I raise the following questions. Why are gender and sexuality important issues to discuss within the context of Afro-diasporic religions? How have Haitian scholars viewed gender and sexuality within the context of Haitian deity and within specifically Ezeli Freda? What can scholars learn from this deity and from the understandings of Haitian gender and sexuality? And also I seek to find out how scholars view this religion as a mode of healing and survival. So briefly about Haitian Vodou, it is a religion that's deeply ingrained into the everyday life of the people who practice it. In the book Vodou in Haitian Life, Culture, and Visible Powers, Claudine Michel, who was my mentor and mother of Kira Daniels, and Patrick Bellegarde-Smith, another one of my mentors, argue that being a Vodou practitioner is a form of humanism. This religion is built around the daily living of the Haitian people and practitioners and offers a practical way of understanding the world, a way of being and a way of living one's life. So Karen McCarthy Brown, the author of Mama Lola, also echoes this as she says, Vodou is a repository of wisdom accumulated by a people who have lived through slavery, hunger, disease, repression, corruption, and violence, all in excess. Vodou is a system that they, Haitians, have devised to deal with the suffering that is life, a system whose purpose is to minimize pain, avoid disaster, cushion loss, and strengthen survivors and survival instincts. Vodou's value as a religion lies in its ability to be malleable into the needs of its believers, and it informs and shapes their histories and is directly responsive to the tribulations. So practitioners can receive advice from the law during Vodou ceremonies about their own personal problems and can be channeled through which how the deities speak to others. And again, this practical everyday faith that gains meaning from the active participation of the initiated. So a form of sacred space is the Vodou temple, and where it could either be in a practitioner's basement, a backyard, or an actual temple or any other private space. So within this space, Vodou provides a special gathering to talk about specific people's traumas and physical pain. These sacred spaces I compare it to the Black feminist scholar Patricia Hill Collins. I don't know if you guys, Patricia Hill Collins thought of alternative sites, and she calls this form as subjugated knowledge, which these intimate spaces are created, especially for Black women, in which these create new knowledges of self-definition and self-value. So in order to bring about a ceremony, one must understand that the deities residing in the ceremony also brings about healing, counseling, and empathy. So briefly, Roberto Strongman talks about the transpossession, which we talked about that, and the mounting, and what happens to the physical body. And he continues to talk about the duality of the self, the gobernage and the tibonage, and how the gobernage is a psyche and the source of memory and the personhood. And again, it is a gobernage that must be prepared well and separated with the initiative to allow the spirit or the lawa to enter its place. He also talks about, which again I'll go into, which my later paper talks about, which is within the transpossession, there is also another gender relation that goes into it. What happens to the body when a woman is mounting a man? What happens to the body when a man has mounted a woman? And again, the performativity and the body that takes place. So this is again a trans possession, but also a trans queer possession that we still need to be engaging in these conversations about. So when I was in Montreal, Canada, I witnessed a devotee being taken over or mounted by Ezeli Freda. The other practitioners sprayed the devotee with perfume and covered her with a baby pink scarf and washed her feet to show their respect. They treated her with care and showered her with gifts. And mostly there were a lot of men around her as she was greatly upset when the women came close to her. So, as you know, I'm a woman, so I was kind of mad. I'm like, Ezeli! She's like, no, not having anything to do with you. So again, she didn't want any competition, which, you know, I guess I am competition, but it's okay. She is also very vain, and the men made sure that the pink silk jewelry and gifts that they were brought were clean and expensive. Representative, and which again, this represented a part of her high maintenance and her feminine persona. But I also really want to talk about that. Why is this role of a specific performativity of femininity? And again, how this is totally distinct for Esli Freda, and is not really seen in terms of like when Esli Gerouge comes out and Esli Danto comes out. And again, this is a characteristic of what is in terms of the human characteristics that we give for people of our spirits, because we are a part of the divine. So with regards to race, there are surface representations based on physical traits that do not elucidate the complexity of Esli Freda. McCarthy Brown argues that Esli Freda imitates ideas of beauty that have social power and prestige. Esli Freda is a lighter skin and is deemed to be indicative of the elite class that can have a social and financial solidity. This is compared to her counterpart, Esli Danto, who was again, quote unquote, black, black, black. Esli Freda is seen as a light-skinned mulatta, and the mulatta is a name given to the sexually desirable, racially mixed woman during slavery and the symbol of the prostitute. The mulatta is seen as more attractive and sexually charged than her darker-skinned counterparts, a product of the complicated racial caste system subsequent to the colonialization of the country. In Sexing the Caribbean, Gender, Race, and Sexual Labor, sociologist Kamala Kempadu argues that within the Caribbean, racial dimensions under slavery understood that the image of the mulatta to be particularly erotic. So she writes, if white womanhood represents the pinnacle of femininity, couched by the assumption of fairness, purity, frailty, and domesticity, and the black womanhood, the total opposite due to the presumed closeness to nature, dark skin, masculine physique, and unbridled sexuality. The combination of European and African produced notions of a light-skinned woman who can almost pass for white, yet retain a tinge of color, as well as to hint at wantonness and uninhibited sexuality or erotic cultures. So Vodou does not escape the colonial notions surrounding skin color that privileges whiteness over blackness in the social hierarchy. The footprints of French colonization and the constant degradation of dark skin has left an indelible mark on Haiti, and even centuries after the revolution in 1804 that destroyed the slave system and the subjugation of the African population. So color is inextricably linked to its privilege, and Esli Freda represents an image of femininity defined by this history. Again, she is a product of her time, and the continual reworking and changing of the product of this time. So within the world, skin color has a discernible effect on life chances and perceptions of people's worth. Therefore, this ingrained, if unfortunately negative, hierarchy makes imprints on the representation of the Loa and their religious practices. So within, again, Haitian religion, I want to end with thinking about Esli Danto and Esli Freda's erotic desires and how, again, they have healing potentials and power within Haiti. And again, this is again thinking about Haitian women and Haitian culture. So McCarthy Brown adds that these female spirits are both mirrors and maps, making the present comprehensible and offering direction for the future. In the caricature, like clarity, possession performances, the Eslis sort out by acting out the conflicting feelings and values in a given life situation. By interacting with the faithful as individuals and groups, all the Vodou spirits clarify option in people's lives, and the Eslis do this especially well with women. Again, dealing with the complexities of what womanhood is and what femininity is. So Esli Freda then is not a shallow stereotype of female vanity, but a mirror capable of showing to our followers the characteristics and strengths that they may possess within their own hearts and minds. Moreover, there is a power in Esli Freda's shamelessness and her proud embrace of her own overtly feminine qualities. They do not connote weakness or catty superficiality, but pieces of the female experience that practitioners can reflect upon and gain wisdom from their own life experiences. She is also a map because she offers paths of thought that value femininity while also acknowledging some of the pitfalls of gender as a constructed idea. vanity, and the elevation of light, skin over dark, jealousy, and the vying of male attention and female competition. She is not a law that can be easily quantified or simplified, and this is where her value lies. So these reevaluations and redefinitions provide a more complete, holistic understanding of gender, femininity, womanhood, and sexuality. So thank you very much.